Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from an inmate at the county jail. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charges, press 2.
Well, Eric, you have no idea how many people have been looking for you. Yeah, well, of course, we'll look at hospitals and we'll look at jails. And of course, here you end up over here. You should at least call somebody or write a letter. You know, just like law enforcement usually says, just tell it to the judge. Why you're in there, that's the past for me. There's nothing I can do about it. The fact that we need to set up the future, make sure people can support you, hear from you, that's the important thing. Well, that that can be resolved in court if you keep a level mind. And I understand. Yeah, I'll put some money on the books for you so you can make some calls. And you need to call your family, let them know what's going on. But when people just drop off the face of the earth, and this wouldn't happen if you keep regular contact. And since you're in that position where you tend to break the law, you need to stay in contact with somebody. Get maybe a close family member, somebody you can trust, and just I think social media is real good for that. If you send out something on the timeline or of a social account, or maybe send a message out once in a while. For me, I like to send messages out every day on Facebook. And when people don't see those messages, they get a little concerned. And that's the way it should be, because what I'm doing is I'm letting people know that I'm up and running around and there's no need to be concerned. But if I just disappear for a while, especially after doing something normal and regular like that, then there'll be some cause for concern. And with you guys, you'll get on the social media and then you'll disappear for a little while, then you pop up, or you'll visit people and then you'll stop. And it's very hard to keep an eye out for you. And that's a routine we need to work on. We need to get it to the point where you're just constantly in contact with somebody, and we can keep an eye on you. And that's life. Those things happen. Don't think that you're above everybody else, or you're that the problems that you have are worse than anybody else. What you're going through, people all over the world go through, and they've been going through it for centuries. There's really nothing new. And we understand the ups and downs, and the economy's really bad, and it's tough to make ends meet. And being a convicted felon, I know things are really hard for you. But you got to understand there's people out there who've been through it and they've gotten through the situation. No matter how bad you think you have it, somebody out there has had it worse. And a few people, even if it's two or three, have actually been through similar situations as you and got through it. And then you have those small percentage that just give in. And I hate when I find out somebody who's doing so well out here falls off the wagon and goes back to prison. Well, there's no guarantee that a lawyer will keep you out of prison, but there's no reason to give up hope. You're going to have to do your part. You're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to share your story, and you're definitely going to have to keep in
You
contact
have
with your
60
family.
seconds remaining.
Oh yeah. I will scold, but I want you to understand that there's people out here who care about you, and nobody wants you to go to prison. Nobody wants you to fail in life. We want to see you succeed, and we want to see you stay out of prison. And we're going to need your help on that. That's right. Yeah, it's definitely up to you. There's only so much we can do. Good. Well, I'm glad you got
You have 30 seconds remaining.
my letter. I'm glad you called. And once I put that money on there, make sure you make those phone calls. Well, yeah. And I understand. I don't memorize numbers either, but you should know at least one number, and then they can help you find it. But if anything, call me. Yeah, yeah, and I can get you the numbers and stuff. So you got to.
Thank you for using Inmate Call. Goodbye.
Well, hello, and welcome to AQS Inmate Call, and I am your host Joel Wilborn. And what I want to talk about this time is usually I attack the Department of Corrections. And I think the public needs to know as much detail as possible about what goes on inside the facilities out there. There's a lot of crime that's committed in there, and there's when you take people off the street who are career criminals and you put them in prison, they're not going to stop their crimes. Prison doesn't automatically mean it's a safe place and it's a crime-free zone. It's you got the same people. That's all there is to it. And your loved ones are stuck in there with people who are violent offenders. And then you have those that are remorseful. They want to get out and do better. And then you got those that just don't know what they want to do. So there's a mix. And where we can just walk away or get away from those things on the outside, on the inside, they're locked in on that. They see these people every day. And in some cases, they're in the same room with them. And that's something we need to know about. And I want to broadcast that. But there's also another side of what goes on in that prison, something that's outside of the DOC. The way I look at it, the DOC has its rules and its laws and its regulations. And then there's the prisoners who have their rules and their laws and their regulations. And we can pick up books and we can look at documentaries and we can do some research and we can find out what the prison, the law enforcement DOC, what their standards are. But the prisoners, we don't always know what's going on unless you talk to the people. And that's where you find out what's really going on. When you talk to a prisoner about what's going on in the prison, you learn a lot because they're not supposed to share information, but they do. They're not supposed to, let's say, manipulate people or take advantage of weaknesses. All these things that constitute crimes are just like an everyday thing for the people that's in the prison, the inmates. So when I talk to the inmates and I get an idea of what's really going on in there, it's easier to take advantage of the situation to help the people on the outs. People who are about to go to prison, they need to know that so that they can so that they'll have a better chance of survival. And those who are getting out of prison, they need to know that when you get out here, the prisoner rules are are gone. And it's kind of tough for them to transition because they're so used to following prisoner rules and then kind of playing into the DOC rules. So we gotta de um, I guess they're kind of like they're all set on the bad level, and we need to kind of get them out of that, break them out of that bad habit. And in order to do that, we need to understand who we're dealing with. And from what I've learned about probation officers and parole officers, is there's a lot of corruption that's going on in them. A lot of the women say that you have to have sex with these people in order to get out of a bad situation. Maybe they did something that violated their probation, and so they do this sexual favor, and it's not reported. And if I fight that, they'll come back and say, no, this is a standard. All the women do that. and they don't want to talk about it. And so these are vulnerable people. They get out, they don't want to go back to prison. They're scared, they're nervous, they feel lost, and these people take advantage of it. And law enforcement will do that, and the DOC will do that. It's just, as much as I want to ignore it or deny it, it's there. And there's really not much we can do to stop it. But if we are aware of it and we do report it, who knows? Maybe the funding will come along. Maybe some righteous people will come along. I don't know. But if we do nothing, nothing's going to ever be resolved. So we're going to have to at least get the information out there. So when recent reports came up of children being sexually abused in detention centers, and when we hear about prisons that were just used as power hungry cells where people just did whatever they want, or when people die in prison, or they go into prison and they come out with a severe chronic illness or something, those things can be prevented. And if we I think the big curse is that we just don't have anybody monitor them. And I think every state should have somebody. There should, the federal government will create agencies for, like, we had Homeland Security that came up after terrorist attacks. If prisons are constantly having these problems, there should be an agency, maybe a federal agency, set up that's sole purpose is to monitor the correctional centers. I really don't see any reason why not. But for now, we have to do that. We have to talk to these people, and we have to push for legislation. And when our county was voting to build a new jail, I was against that. And there were a lot of people against it, so much so that when it came up for a vote, we voted it down. I agree with that 100%. We don't need more prisons. We don't need more jails. And people who are in rural areas, the federal government's making a lot of cuts. And so you could have somebody in a jail in a small town, rural area, and they're not getting the medical attention that they would in a bigger city or in a prison, especially like a federal prison. And those are the people that are the most vulnerable. And it's our responsibility as a community to see to it that all people are well cared for. Yeah, these folks might have stolen your car, but it doesn't mean that we need to turn them into a worse person than they were before. So let's say a young man steals your car, gets caught, you want this person locked away, person goes to prison and winds up being beat to death by another prisoner, or inmate, shall we say, in the jail. So if this person goes to jail, gets beat up by another inmate, and dies, then that's us. It's not necessarily you because you reported the crime and you were there to testify against the person. It's the system let this person down. And you might say, well, the world's a better place without this person in it. We really don't know that. We can't say that for sure. And we'll never know the potential of people unless we study them, and we'll never know how dangerous these people are unless we study them. And we're just going to have to interact with folks more often. So while New York is talking about replacing, or shall I say New York City is talking about replacing police officers with social workers, I think a lot of the correctional centers should have more social workers and psychologists, people that can just sit and interact with the people on a regular basis. It does make a big difference. Now, the good I want to talk about with this And this is nothing that the Department of Correction does, because I really don't see a lot of good that comes from them. But when we interact with people, we understand a little more of what's going in their life. The people I talk to hate the prison, and that's the way it should be. If I talk to a person and said it's great in here, I'm having a good time, it would draw a red flag. So I expect to hear that it's terrible. But if a person has an infection and it's not being treated, that's cruel and unusual punishment in my book. And when we talk with people, we get to hear what's going on in there, and we can get the treatment in there. And now if the person goes to prison, understands that on the outside world there are people who will help and who will speak up for them, when they do get out, they're less likely to commit a crime because they'll have resources to turn to rather than crime. In many cases, the crime is what they consider the final straw, the last thing that they can possibly come up with. It's like suicide. Life is so terrible, suicide's the only way out of it. If a person gets out and knows that there's resources available, maybe a church group or maybe a government nonprofit, something that the people can turn to rather than crime, they'll understand that crime isn't the only and the last resort for them. And I deal with people who have a lot of talents, various talents, but they just don't realize it. I've had a lot of inmates send me things. They'll send me things that they crocheted or necklaces that they beaded, or they'll send me poems, songs, stories. They'll actually give me advice on cooking or auto repair. And then they can also help me find people. There's folks that say, my loved one is missing. Will you help me? I had a woman contact me on Facebook, and she says, you're friends with this person, and I loaned her my car. Can you help me get it back? And I reached out to several people, and I was able to help her get her car back. And that wouldn't be possible if I didn't have this networking, this connection out here. Law enforcement can use that connection. Community leaders can use that connection. Loved ones can lose that connection or could use that connection because it's a resource that's available to us pretty much free of charge. And it's a valuable resource, but it's a resource that not a lot of people take advantage of. And it's scary to think that you could solve a crime by talking to the people who know people who know people. We all know the story of Gary Ridgway when he was out committing his crimes, and law enforcement went to Ted Bundy. And then, of course, we get this movie, Silence of the Lambs, that comes out of it. You go to a criminal and you tap into the resources. And all law enforcement people and people in the correctional uh, system, they know that people can easily manipulate them. And so they have to be aware of that. And manipulation is a tool that, properly used, can help de escalate an issue, or can help solve a problem, or can help get better control of a volatile situation. Just saying, we gotta talk to the people. We gotta be more observant. And correctional personnel, correctional officers, they're not equipped to handle everything. They're more focused on a certain agenda. And so if we have people go in there, and counselors could be well trained for this, that that are specialized in helping to prevent, being proactive instead of reactive, then we could resolve a lot. And I don't want to see people kill themselves. I don't want to see people get murdered, and I don't want to see people pick up a disease that's going to eventually kill them. I want to see people make a mistake, realize that they made that mistake, go to the prison, go to the jail, and get assistance so that when they get out, this won't happen again. We have refugees come from other countries. A lot of them sneak in, they come in illegally, and so we're trying to get them out. And there's a lot of resistance on that. Well, that kind of mentality, that kind of resistance can be used in the prisons. If you have a person who goes to a prison and they're just being kept there, or they're being abused, neglected, and just dehumanized, why don't we have protesters that stand up for them? Some prisons get these illegal refugees, and we got people that's in the prison that just kind of train that we don't like these people. And it goes back to the old Nazi days where the Jews are the bad people. And so if this person is a Jew, you immediately treat this person without any respect or no support, just because the person's a Jew. Just because the person's a refugee doesn't mean we need to treat this person any less than anybody else. Just because this person is a criminal doesn't mean we need to treat this person less than anybody else. But that's what we're leaning toward. We're grouping people as the bad guy instead of trying to find out how we can help these people and working on an alternative way. But I don't know. We're just going to keep fighting, and we're going to get nowhere. So I'm asking that you look at the talent that we have locked up and tap into it. Let all people know that they have a purpose in life, that their life is not worthless, and that there are better ways to resolve a situation than committing a crime. And when we hear from people that tell us these things, when we share that information with people, we can keep people out of prison. And that's what I'm looking for. So again, I want to ask that you listen to some of the other episodes under AQS Inmate Call and go to my YouTube channel and look up Oxyword. Listen to some of the interviews of the people in there. Listen to their stories. And form your own opinion. And see what you want to do to make your community safe. And hopefully it's more than just sitting there reading books and posting on social media. Hopefully you'll do a little bit of research. And a lot of people are interested in crime stories. And when you watch things like 2020 or 48 Hours, Dateline, that's where I get a lot of information from and contact people on there. I'll see that they're in a prison in Washington, and I'll reach out. And I reach a lot of people through those news magazines because I want to do something. And you're not at a point in your life where you can't do anything. That only happens because you think so. You can do a lot. And you can reach out to these people and you can listen. And then you can share that information. And in many cases, you can reach out to legislators or social media or even the mainstream media and share the story. Share what your experience is. Maybe you're a victim of a crime. Maybe you were in prison. And then you can also mentor people. The big brothers, big sisters go down to do church work, uh, volunteer work at community centers. This makes a difference. And rather than sitting around restricting people's rights, taking their rights away from them to say that's going to prevent crime, let's actually get out there and do it. Let's make that effort and make it happen. And if we're going to protest the criminals, protest the crime, and protest the way we're handling them so that we can learn and move ahead and get this behind us and focus on some other things. Maybe if people weren't starving in the United States, there wouldn't be as much crime. I don't know. We got to get out there. We got to find out. We can do this and we can do it together. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have yourself a marvelous day and go out and make fantastic memories for tomorrow.